Welcome to Author Talk at CBS News. I'm Jeff Glor, joined today by J. Grigsby Crawford, author of The Gringo, a rollicking memoir of your 2 years in Ecuador.
Correct.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
What brought you to Ecuador?
I wanted to test myself. I mean, there's all sorts of the reasons you can say for a young man in his 20s, wanting to explore something and get out there in the world. Obviously do some good. I was a Peace Corps volunteer.
Yep.
But the more and more I thought about it, and this is a question you think about even after you've gotten there, is why? Why? Just boiling down to the real reason why. And when I boil it down, it was to test myself, see what I was made of.
How did you end up, so you knew you wanted to do the Peace Corps. How did they decide, or do you pick Ecuador?
No, not at all. Not at all. You go through the Peace Corps application process, and you don't get to choose anything. They ask you your preference of region, and I lobbied pretty hard for Latin America. I knew I wanted to go back to Latin America, and then they just put you in whichever country. I was actually supposed to go to Bolivia, and then there was a bit of a brouhaha there where Peace Corps and the ambassador got kicked out, and then I was back in the waiting list for Peace Corps and eventually got sent to Ecuador.
So the idea of going in the first place, was it to help other people? Was it to sort of discover more about yourself? What was it?
All of the above. Probably more of the latter, but obviously the former is a big part of that too.
You ended up in a couple different parts of Ecuador, one of which ended after you were nearly kidnapped.
That's right, an abduction attempt.
An abduction attempt. Your counterpart there at the time was a man named Juan, and this was, when you first introduced Juan and described him, it's one of my favorite parts of any book I read all year. The full-on description that you give of Juan.
It was haunting.
Because he's an interesting individual,
Yeah.
and he became not just interesting, but dangerous along the way.
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me a little about him.
Well, first of all, you get sent to a community. You're supposed to be teamed up with what they call a counterpart. They're usually supposed to be some sort of community leader, maybe a political figure, or maybe they're head of an organization in town. But not only are they somewhat of your boss, but they're a bit of your caretaker while you're there. They have to originally find you housing and things like that. So imagine my surprise the first time I meet my counterpart, and he's about 5 years younger than me, getting his degree in ecotourism from the local university. And of course, he was a bizarre-looking fellow, but then on top of that, throughout the 2 months there leading up to the eventual abduction attempt, I realized it was just kind of a web of lies and bizarre circumstances of half-truths in terms of why I was sent there as a volunteer and my living situation and a bizarre family that I was sent to live with.
You say about the coastal area where you were, where you started at least, quote, "The people there wake up every morning and get kicked in the face by life. Every day is a battle, and they're losing."
It's a bit of a brusque way to put it, but I mean, I thought it was an apt description of just, it's a place, it's hot, it's humid. I described it as one time kind of like the swamplands of the antebellum South, and also Manabí, that province, the anti-breadbasket of Ecuador. There's, people are poor, they're not doing well. And like I said, it was a great place for a Peace Corps volunteer because you name it, they didn't have it. The sky was the limit for what you could improve, but obviously things didn't turn out that way given the circumstances.
Before we talk about some other experiences in the book, I want to talk about the Peace Corps just quickly, because the year you left was the 50th anniversary
Correct.
of the Peace Corps, correct? What are the goals of the Peace Corps?
Well, they have three. I think maybe celebrating their 50th is a bit of a dubious distinction for an organization that was wanted to, improve the quality of life, so no exit strategy. But since the time that JFK started it, has had three goals. The first is to improve the quality of life for people in the developing world, and the second two are teach them about our culture, and then the reverse, come back home and teach Americans about the culture that we experience. So those are the three core goals of the Peace Corps.
So as you say in the book, 66% of it could arguably be just
hanging out,
chilling in the country.
And that's a big part of the Peace Corps' problem right now. They can't decide if they're a real development organization or just a body of cultural exchange, and the result is that they're probably doing poorly at both of them.
What does the Peace Corps think of this book?
Well, I haven't talked to any of the higher ups at Peace Corps, but honestly, the biggest surprise for me since it's come out is I always assumed that other Peace Corps people would not be fans of it. It's simply not a flattering portrayal. You know, I tell my story honestly, that's what happened, but the result is obviously just not a good take on it. So the biggest surprise, I always assumed they wouldn't like it because Peace Corps people tend to be protective of its legacy or mythology, as I would put it. But incredibly, a lot of people have been big fans of it. People who are volunteers with me, people who've worked there, mostly they just say, yeah, that's pretty accurate, or they say, thank you for finally telling such an honest account. I mean, nowhere in this book will you hear me write or see me write, they're poor but they're happy. You know, these tropes that we've heard over and over, people traveling through the developing world. I just wanted to cut out all the BS and get straight to the heart of the matter.
Because there are a lot of days people think Peace Corps. You think every day you're building a new school or building something that's wonderful or amazing, and there were many days you just found yourself
absolutely
doing nothing.
Absolutely,
the majority of days.
And that's when you find out a little bit about yourself.
Right,
lots of days of doing nothing.
You read a lot. You read 150 books.
Yeah. That's right.
In 2 years? Well, you're 152, I think it was.
Very good. And not just, I mean, Moby Dick, Infinite Jest, you know.
Infinite Jest. Nice.
Atlas Shrugged.
You got through it in Ecuador. You were poor.
Yeah,
with all due respect to a genius,
cut
I
out
love,
the
David Foster
sometimes.
Wallace. So what do you feel like you did accomplish besides read a lot?
Well, ultimately, I did, write a successful grant to the USDA and get money to have a greenhouse built in my community that the local high school could work on, do hands-on environmental education stuff. So, remarkably, for as negative as it is at times and how disillusioned I get with the whole experience, I actually did leave there with a concrete accomplishment. But in the end, obviously, you see that even contributes to a little bit of the guilt I had. Here's another just. Ultimately, what did I teach? I was another white gringo coming to town. Did I teach them just to have their hands out waiting for the next time someone comes in from a faraway place with money and claiming to do some project?
You were taken out of the first spot, as we mentioned, because of some serious danger that was involved and a potential kidnapping that was averted. You were sent somewhere else thanks to one of your other colleagues being administratively separated.
That's true.
After just a few days. So you lucked out and you went there after a few months. Tell me how that experience was different.
Going to the second site?
Yeah.
Well, different in a lot of ways. I mean, Ecuador is a small country, about almost the exact same size as Colorado, yet it has three distinct regions because the Andes run right down the middle of it. So you've got the coastal area, then the high Sierra Andes, towns that are up around 10, 12,000 feet elevation, and then sloping down in the Amazon region. So I went from the coast to the Amazon. It was literally, in a lot of ways, like going to a different country. They spoke Spanish a little bit differently, different culture, and going there was, and I wasn't prepared for it because you go through training, getting ready for the site that you're going to go to, and then all of a sudden, okay, you're going to this completely different place. And, by the way, one of the most isolated sites you could have in Ecuador.
And you were sent there in part because they had specifically requested a male.
That's right.
Volunteer.
They didn't care what kind of skills I had. They didn't care what I could do. They just wanted a male volunteer.
Why?
I think they wanted to flirt with me. But which is actually later what somebody told them. The other volunteer to help them fill out the application told me.
They just wanted a guy in the office or in the area
to balance it out.
To hang out with.
Yes, unfortunately.
You also encountered, along with some serious stretches of boredom and loneliness, you encountered some medical difficulties.
That's right.
Which you're very honest with in the book. And
this is a family-friendly network.
Which becomes sort of a running theme toward the back end of the book. Can you talk about that at all? In a family-friendly way?
Well, what would you like to know? It was painful.
Yeah.
And I was isolated out there. Taking the 17-hour bus ride to Quito to go see an internal medicine specialist and get, the second testicular sonogram and rectal sonogram was not the most comfortable bus ride of my life.
I would say that it wouldn't be. How long did this? Thank you for introducing the concepts of where you were hurting. But
man plumbing, we say.
yes, and you do actually say in the biography in the back of the book that you've encountered no difficulties or rare difficulties in there.
I'm back.
It's not easy dealing with, not only dealing what you were dealing with in a foreign country, in a foreign language, but then dealing with medical difficulties, and you're not dealing with the right treatment, and you don't know what to do.
Yeah, it was a bit frustrating. And in a way, though, kind of just like the the near kidnapping experience at the beginning, when you've signed up for something partially because you want the adventure, can you really complain when it's not the kind of adventure you're maybe expecting? So there's a little bit of that too, but not that I would have ever wanted what I ended up experiencing there.
For more, you may have to tune into the book.
Please do.
You started with 44 volunteers and 28 finished, you said?
Thereabouts. Yeah, I think that's about right.
So what happens to those 16 people, those 16 initial Peace Corps volunteers who don't make it?
My goodness, a few didn't make it out of training for whatever reason. A couple got kicked out for unauthorized traveling. One got married and had a kid and decided to stay in Ecuador but not be a Peace Corps volunteer.
Wow.
But those are pretty, I'd have to look at the exact numbers, but Peace Corps kind of predicts a dropout rate that's sometimes similar to that. It's worse in other places like Africa, I think. Sometimes they're up around 50 or 75%, but it's not for everyone.
If someone's out there watching and they're thinking of joining the Peace Corps, what do you tell them?
First, read my book, obviously, and decide for yourself. But it's a deeply personal experience in a way, just because like I say, you're going to find out some things about yourself, right? I'd feel strange telling someone whether or not they could do it. What I would tell someone, acting like I'm all old and wise or something, but if someone came to me, getting out of college, I would tell them, do anything where you can get out in the world, experience a new place, a new culture that you never knew anything about. Doesn't have to be the Peace Corps. Doesn't have to be with the U.S. government.
Yeah, I would say
you can grow your hair long and go backpacking in Europe, but I think it's good for anyone to get an experience just where they're expanding their horizons.
It's not a book about the Peace Corps. It's a book about self-discovery and what takes place over the course of 2 years. You're back now. You've been back for almost 2 years, right? What's next?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the return, just because I actually found a lot of the themes that are in here, loneliness, isolation, disconnection, are just as relevant, I think, in American life. So depending on what I write next, I think it could involve something like that. I mean, I came back and discovered that the U.S. is a country probably uniquely where you can be surrounded yet isolated, in a sense. So, I mean, maybe there's some of those same themes, but in terms of what I write next, I don't know. That's a little exciting.
And what role does the online world play in that, in being surrounded but also isolated in some way?
Oh, it definitely contributes to it. I mean, I prefer to, have an actual hangout with people than a
virtual one.
than a virtual hangout.
What was your internet, phone, whatever else access in Ecuador, by the way?
Well, I had a Nokia phone, one of those old bricks.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have dropped it off the top of a building and
damaged
it's probably still
a few people and the sidewalk.
I did have internet in my town, but it wasn't very good. You couldn't stream a YouTube clip. Actually, the internet only got to my town about halfway through the time that I was there, and it helped because I started a magazine for Peace Corps Ecuador while I was there, so I did have to email quite a bit. But if I wanted to stream highlights of the last week's Broncos game or something, I had to take a 4-hour bus ride to a big city that actually had good internet.
Good luck to your Broncos, my friend.
Well, thank you.
J. Grigsby Crawford, author of The Gringo, a memoir. You've been watching Author Talk at CBS News. I'm Jeff Glor.